I have some sad news to report. A small puppy, not unlike Lassie, was just run over in the parking lot. And now it's time for the comedy stylings of
Canonically Crumb News.
Are you ready to laugh? Oh, that poor dog. I said, are you ready to laugh?
Quiet, you awful man.
News. Extra, extra. It's a very sad episode of Canonically Crumb News. For better or worse, your number one source for fast-breaking Crummyverse news. Boy, what a depressing scoop, Crumb Bums. You know, in the first episode of Canonically Crumb News, I started by saying this episode is kind of proof of concept for a Canonically Crumb supplemental news series. And who knows when the next opportunity will strike. So, I wish I hadn't said it like that, because tragically, the opportunity has come far too soon. And it's with a heavy heart that I'm here to tell you today about the death of pioneering underground cartoonist and the wife of Robert Crumb, Aileen Kaminsky Crumb.
The world above grew sad and lonely, cold winter winds were blowing, and everywhere the woodland creatures were in despair and grieving for their lovely daughter.
Right now, not that much is known. The announcement was made first by Gallery VP in Sauve, France, where she was scheduled to have an art opening earlier today. From there, news spread to social media, and since I began putting together this video, Forbes and other sites are starting to report her death. Like I said, it's early, more information might come out, but it seems like the cause was cancer. In some collaborative comics that she made with Robert last year in 2021, she revealed that she had previously received 8 months of chemo treatment for colon cancer and had had a portion of her colon removed, but at that time she believed herself to be cancer-free. As a result, she was the only member of the Crumb clan willing to get vaccinated for COVID due to a compromised immune system. And also because someone set the whole thing up for her and she was just too nice to refuse. But according to the official R. Crumb website, Aileen had been suffering from pancreatic cancer for the last several months. And sadly, Aileen Kaminsky Crumb died yesterday on November 29th, 2002, at the age of 74. So who is Aileen Kaminsky Crumb? Well, as a person, as a character, as an artistic collaborator with Robert, and a sort of mystic presence in Crumb's life, Aileen will be the subject of many, many future episodes of Canonically Crumb. So I'm not going to do a comprehensive biography of her or anything like that today. And I think it would be inappropriately sad as well. Because she was too much of an upbeat and energetic and funny person for this to be the episode to do that in. But if you don't know, you should know that Aileen Kaminsky Crumb was born Aileen Goldsmith on August 1st, 1948, to a Jewish family in Long Island. She got the name Kaminsky from her short-lived first marriage, and she kept it because she thought it sounded more exotic than Goldsmith. I guess you'd say she was a troubled youth. Not too different, at least spiritually, I suspect, from the Crummyverse character Honeybunch Kaminsky, who Crumb, amazingly, began drawing years before ever even meeting Aileen. She moved to San Francisco in the early 1970s and joined the underground comics scene, as well as the feminist art collective Women's Comics. In 1972, Crumb's fellow Zap collaborator Spain Rodriguez introduced Aileen to Robert, and it just so happens that they were soulmates, basically. Robert and the bunch. Shortly afterwards, Aileen moved into an old trailer next to Crumb's cabin, which was on the same country property as the house that Robert's estranged wife Dana lived in with their son Jesse. Yikes. If you want to learn more about that, I talk about it in Canonically Crumb number 2, those cute little bearsy-wearsies. In 1973, they began drawing comics together. Both Robert and Aileen would draw themselves, and these would become her best-known works, which I refer to as dirty laundry, even when they're called something else. And like we saw at the beginning of the episode, they would continue to air their dirty laundry together right up until the very end. But Aileen also made her own comics, and she regularly contributed to anthologies up until the birth of her daughter Sophie Crumb in 1981, 3 years after marrying Robert, when she took several years off to raise her daughter. She was the editor of Weirdo magazine for a number of issues in the late 80s, before convincing Robert to trade a suitcase full of sketchbooks for a villa in France, where she moved the family in 1991 and began to focus more on her painting. You can get a good gander at what that time leading up to the move was like for Aileen and Robert in the documentary Crumb from 1994, which is as good or better than any documentary out there about anything, so check it out. And I talk about it quite a bit in Canonically Crumb number 6, Rashomon at Terry Zweigoff's, so check that out too. Now, Aileen took a lot of shit for her relationship and her work with Robert, and she took it in stride, I might add. A lot of feminist cartoonists saw Crumb in his comics as sexist and misogynistic, glorifying violence and degrading sexual fantasies towards women, and, you know, they're kind of right, what can I say? But Aileen had a different attitude about it, because she basically wanted to make the same kinds of comics, but, you know, from her own perspective, because, you know, those kinds of comics were weird and cool and funny, and so was she. Aileen was a feminist, but she found a lot of the comics being made by other feminist cartoonists to be overly self-serious and too militant, maybe. The notable exception was her longtime friend and fellow underground cartoonist Diane Newman, who sadly passed away earlier this year as well. On the other side of the gender spectrum, men gave her a hard time too. Many of Crumb's fans despised her art, and they resented her for being in their comics. She was seen as a bit of a Yoko Ono figure, shifting his work to a more autobiographical tone and cutting into Robert's weird big-ass sex stuff. But she just laughed it off and often rubbed their pathetic, wounded fandom back in their own stupid faces. In fact, she reveled in it. After finally shattering the glass ceiling of Zap Comics in 2016, she pointed out that she had slept with 5 out of 8 members in the past. She's an important figure in the history of underground comics, and she's been a major influence on many artists who have come in the years after. So if you want to check out her work, I recommend 2 books. Drawn Together, which features her collaborative comics with Crumb, as well as Love That Bunch, which collects her solo comic work. And whatever you think of her work, she's basically kept Crumb alive for the last 5 decades, and she's influenced his work to such a degree that it's really impossible to imagine what it would look like without her. She was his wife, his partner, his lover, and his best friend, and I can't imagine how sad he must feel right now. And especially after losing his son Jesse Crumb to a car accident just in 2018, you know, my heart just breaks for the poor guy. It just breaks. So what's going to happen to old Robert Crumb now? Well, In that same Dirty Laundry comic from 2021, which I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, he actually wonders what would happen to him if she did die. And he concludes that he'd probably have to go into an old people's home. But given that his daughter Sophie and her husband and children live in France too, and that several other friends and artists have moved to the region in recent years, and, with all his money, hopefully he'll be able to stay at home for years to come. And, somewhat selfishly, I hope he processes his grief through his cartoons, as he does everything else in his life, because, well, I want to read them, and I think they could be helpful for him and other people. As Yoko Ono says, art is a way of survival. Well, Crumb Bums, this has been a very somber episode of Canonically Crumb News. If you like this program, please hit like, hit subscribe, be a ding-dong daddy, and ding that bell. I've been your host, Kyle Bridget. You can find my links in the show description, and join me in the Nostril Zone, where we listen to tunes and draw cartoons every Sunday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Time. And if you want to support this program and myself, you'll also find my Patreon in the show description as well. Canonically Crumb will be back as weekly as possible with another deep dive into the Crumbiverse. Thanks again, Crumb Bums, and keep no-knowing.
Hello, my name is Robert Crumb, and this is my wife, Aileen. We're underground cartoonists.
On the surface, our life appears to be really quaint and charming.
Yes, doesn't it? But underneath, it's a steaming cauldron of sexual perversion, drugs, and twisted neurosis.